Hey, last time you started up the application and explored the project structure. Now it's time to get your hands dirty and write even more React code. The very first thing to do is to delete that entire source directory. To which you might be thinking, heavens no, not all of that precious code. Now your reaction probably was not that dramatic, but really I think it's best to write this source directory from scratch because that's where all the React code lies, rather than continuing off this template source directory. So first up, we're going to delete this entire source directory. And then the first change after that is to recreate the source directory. So now there should be an empty source directory within the project. The default file for a directory in a JavaScript project is the index.js file. Now, why is it called index? Well, this is a direct reference to the index.html file name. Back in the early days of web development, the index.html file was actually used like an index, like you think it would, in that it contained a bunch of links to other HTML files with content in the website. Now, personally, I think default.js or main.js would have been a more clear name for what the index.js file actually does, but index is okay as long as you remember that it's the convention for the default file of a JS project. So make sure you have source index.js. Within here, we're going to recreate a lot of the JavaScript code that we just blew away within the original create React app source index.js file. But now rather than reading the code, we're going to be writing it ourselves, which is a way better learning approach. In the original index.js file, there was this code to insert a React created component into the core HTML, and our goal is going to be to do the same exact thing. The first requirement is to import the React library into the file. Use the import keyword, specify the React library with a capital R, and then the module itself is called React, and this is all lowercase, and have that in a pair of single quotes. So the effect is that this line reaches into the React library that we have installed in our node modules directory, and it loads in the globally declared React variables and methods that are within this React library itself. Next, we have to do the insertion into the React DOM, and for that, we import the React DOM library. So import React DOM. Notice that D, O, and M are capitalized, and then this comes from the React-DOM library. Now, most React files will only need to import the first React library. But since this file is going to do the insertion with a core document, that's why we also need the React DOM library as well. After all, it contains the core React DOM.render line. If you'll recall, the React DOM takes two arguments, or rather the React DOM render method takes two arguments. First, we provide a component or an element to render. Now, at this point, we don't have a component to render just yet, but we can create an element rather quickly. A React element is the smallest object within a React application. They're pretty much copies of HTML elements. So think of div tags, h1 tags, image tags, etc. Those are all HTML elements. And a React element is very much the same. They represent an object at that level, like a div or an h1 or an image. In React, we represent those elements with a syntax called JSX, meaning JavaScript JS, and XML-like syntax X. So XML is this other markup language like HTML, which is based off the pattern of using arrow-like tags. For our first element, let's add a div, and this will say React element. So that becomes what we want to render within the application. Nice. Now we have the second argument of the render method, and in the second argument, we specify where we want this React element to get inserted. To do that, we can access the core JavaScript document object. This document object is provided to any JavaScript file running in the browser, and there's way more to this document object than meets the eye, so we're going to have videos dedicated to exploring it in way more detail later on. For now, we're going to use the getElementById function that we saw earlier, so access .getElementById, and we're going to insert at the root div location within the index.html file. Again, if you check the public/index.html file, you're going to find that right within the body section, there's this div with the ID of root. So the effect is that our React element should end up being inserted within this root when we run the application in the browser. Okay, so overall, make sure you have this entire index.js changes. And this gives us enough to rerun the application and see the new content. So once you have that, go to the command line, and then once again, fire npm run start if you don't have it going already. And now in the browser, you should find that there is a React element appearing as the entire application. And if you look at the element section within the developer console, indeed, React element has been inserted within the root. All right, great work. We wrote the entire source directory from scratch using the index.js file to import React and the React DOM library, and then insert a React element into the document. Next up, let's extend upon this concept of React elements to create an entire React component. If you enjoy this content, head to davidtkatz.com. There, you'll find links to full courses, as well as to reach out and connect with me. For React and Redux in particular, you'll want to check out udemy.com/React Redux Bootcamp. This is a course I made to help you learn React and Redux the right way, and to turn you into React and Redux developer. Okay, see you in the next one.